Hello everyone. Today I will be discussing a clinical assessment of a fictional character. I want to make a quick note that for this analysis there will be spoilers for God of War 2018, and that we will be working under the assumption that we received this client before the end of the story. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. The client is Baldr Odinson, a 144-year-old Aesir man from Asgard. There is a lot we don't know about his background, such as his birthday, educational history, development, and previous medical history, including substance use and mental health history. For the sake of this analysis, we are going to work off the idea that these are unremarkable until stated otherwise. For his career, Baldr works for his father as a tracker. Often this entails confronting people who his father has problems with. I want to make note of some unique identifying features, which consist of his traditional tattoos. We know the translation for 4 of them. The red runes across his shoulders translate to cursed. The runes on his left pectoral translate to I am death. The circle of runes on his abdomen translate to the Norns weave out this bond. And the 2 black triangles on his back represent the ether, which is a symbol for gods of light, the sky, and of air. Next, let's explain some things about his cultural and familial background before getting into the presenting problem. It's important to understand the client's cultural background in order to understand their concerns thoroughly. Baldr grew up in the Aesir Norse culture specifically. I am going to go over a few key elements, but it should be understood that they will be very simplified. Please check out the resources at the end to learn more about these. First, in his culture, dreams are considered to be prophetic and are taken very seriously, especially ones regarding death. Next, magic is an accepted practice, and the Norse truly believe in its effects. Magic can mean spells, curses, transformations, healing, and prophecy. The prophecy of Ragnarok is essentially the end of the world. It consists of several years of unending winter and a massive war. It is said that it will occur after Baldr's death, and most of the Aesir will die in this event. While the Aesir are commonly referred to as gods, this does not mean they are truly immortal. They can age, be injured, get sick, and die just like anyone else. Next, the Norse have strict gender norms, especially for men who are expected to be brave, aggressive, honorable, and self-sufficient. Being seen as unmasculine could be a grave insult. Finally, death is not always regarded as a universally negative thing, and is in fact often desired in Aesir culture. Their beliefs about death inform the Norse lifestyle to celebrate life while one can. Those who die in glory, such as warriors who die in battle or women who die in childbirth, go to Valhalla or Folkvanger, which are described as being heaven-like. Most ordinary people would likely go into the light of Alfheim, which does not have a consistent description but is neither good or a bad death. Those who were cowards, criminals, or otherwise dishonorable are said to go to Helheim, which is described as a cold, hell-like place.
And here I thought my family was fucked up.
Baldr lives in Asgard with his paternal family, which consists of his father, Odin, his half-brothers Thor and Heimdall, as well as Thor's wife and kids. He is currently estranged from his older half-brother Tyr. This is due to Odin and not the client. He and his father both had a falling out with his mother, Freya, who is sometimes referred to as Frigg. We do not know much of his relationship with his siblings, but his parents are of importance to this case. Odin, also referred to as the Allfather, is regarded as the community's leader, and his family holds great status because of it. He and his ex-wife Freya both practice magic. In the story, we don't see Baldr and Odin interact with each other, but we do know that Odin promised Baldr a cure to his presenting problems as a mean of manipulating him. In the sequel, we do see how Odin interacts with his other sons, which can give us some insight on to how he possibly treated Baldr. Let's use his treatment of Thor as an example. Odin has told Thor several times that he is stupid, that he is only good at being a destroyer. that his recently dead sons were useless, and that he was no fun anymore when Thor was trying to stay sober. Freya was known as the leader of the Valkyries and is also a magic practitioner. She was arranged to marry Odin in order to end a war, but now they are divorced. She thinks of Baldr as the only good thing to come out of the marriage, and she is very protective of him, regardless of the prophecy of Ragnarok. Mother and son used to share a very close bond, but this was broken when she put a spell on him, after he expressed concerns over prophetic dreams about his death. The spell was intended to protect him from all pain and harm, but it resulted in his presenting problem.
I can't taste. I can't smell. I can't even feel the temperature of this room. Feasting, drinking, women, it's all gone.
The client's presenting problem is that they say they can no longer feel any physical sensations, including pain, temperature, and taste. This has affected his ability to be intimate with partners. Symptoms started about a decade ago after his mother put a spell on him. What this spell actually entails, we do not know. Freya has also noted a change in personality from kind to angry and violent. This change is also expressed in his tattoos. The symbol of being a god of light and peace is on his back, but phrases defining him as cursed are openly displayed in the front. He shows a general aggressive and cold affect when socializing with others. Baldr also holds the belief that he was acting cowardly by showing fear over his prophetic dreams, a trait that could send him to Helheim. It is unclear if some of these thoughts were originally instilled by his father, but it is likely when looking at familial behavioral patterns. He holds an intense grudge against his mother cursing him and her refusal to undo it. He displays risk-taking behaviors, showing a lack of concern for his own well-being. He often instigates physical fights and can be seen walking in freezing environments without proper attire, among other things. So, what are some potential diagnoses for Baldr? Let's start with what it isn't. There is no evidence of symptoms regarding neurodevelopmental, obsessive-compulsive, feeding, eating, elimination, or sleep-wake disorders. While the Aesir are notorious drinkers, and drugs could explain some of the symptoms, there is no reported evidence of any addiction disorders for Baldr. Emotional responses, while strong, do appropriately correspond to specific and appropriate triggers, which eliminates mood, anxiety, or impulse control disorders. While Baldr does mention some sexual concerns, his symptoms go beyond the scope of sexual dysfunction disorders. Finally, the fact that Baldr has had a notable and long-term personality change after a specific event means that there is a better explanation than a personality disorder. The schizophrenic spectrum does line up with some of his symptoms, but he is still missing many criteria for these disorders. While Baldr shows potential signs of delusional thinking and negative behaviors, he lacks the hallucinations that typically come with this family of disorders. It should also be noted that in our cultural perspective, it may appear like he has persecution, nihilistic, and somatic delusions, but this is not the case from his cultural perspective. Spells, prophecies, and the end of the world are all real to the Norse, and thus aren't true delusions in the diagnostic sense. In this case, the catatonia and anhedonia symptoms might be better explained with a different diagnosis. Both the dissociative and somatic disorder families focus on trying to give a psychological explanation for his complete lack of sensory feeling. In regards to dissociative disorders, Baldr has no evidence of having memory loss or multiple personalities, so that leaves us with depersonalization. While it seems to fit well, we similarly do not have evidence of him having the observer perspective common with this disorder. For the somatic, it is possible that his cultural belief in magic is so strong that he truly believes a spell has caused the physical inability to feel. Out of all the conditions, conversion disorder likely fits the most because it focuses on the neurological, but there is one last category to look at that I think fits better.
Help yourself. Can you, mother? stop interfering in my life.
I was just trying to protect you.
I think it is clear that Baldr has trauma to work through. His father was abusive and lied to him, his mother robbed him of autonomy, and he is involved in violence regularly. The question is, does Baldr have a trauma disorder? His symptoms last longer than the requirements for acute stress disorder and adjustment disorder. He is no longer a child, which negates the social engagement disorder and reactive attachment disorder. That leaves PTSD and CPTSD. Now, CPTSD isn't in the DSM-5, but it is in the ICD. And while similar to PTSD in many ways, there are key distinctions that need to be taken into account. Why do I make the distinction between PTSD and CPTSD? This is because the treatment plan is immensely affected by which one is occurring. Both use the same interpretation of what trauma means, which can include abuse, assault, war, and disasters. They also share the risk of developing serious medical conditions, but the risk increases more so with CPTSD. I think their differences are highlighted most in what each are most often misdiagnosed as. PTSD can be mistaken for bipolar disorder or depression and anxiety disorders. CPTSD is commonly mistaken for borderline personality disorder, but it may also be misdiagnosed as autism or dissociative disorders. To simplify, CPTSD is essentially PTSD plus. It develops after several instances of trauma and often occur over a long period of time. It includes all the symptoms common with PTSD, but also includes emotional dysregulation, negative self-concept, cognitive distortions, interpersonal difficulties, as well as additional dissociative and somatic symptoms. How do we help Baldr? First, it should be noted that treatment is going to be an ongoing and layered process, as there is a lot of issues to address. I also want to note that having more education in Norse culture will be crucial if we are to appropriately work with the client. First, I think it would be best to refer him for some medical tests to make sure there isn't real nerve damage causing his physical numbness. We don't know what this spell actually entailed, but knowing if there's physical damage or not will be important to know either way. Next, we need to let Baldr express and process his current emotions. Considering the gender norms and the toxic family dynamics, it is likely he is very restricted in identifying or expressing emotions. This step will help in building trust with the client as well. It'll be important to make sure we add some psychoeducation in order to move forward. He will need to have developed emotional regulation and coping skills for the next parts of treatment. Next, we have to work with Baldr on processing his trauma. There are options in what kind of therapy we can utilize, such as instinctual trauma response therapy, dialectal behavioral therapy, family systems therapy, or narrative art therapy. Out of all of them, I think family systems therapy might work well, considering Baldr, through his tattoos, is showing that there are different identities encompassed by him. It also may be a way of simulating a healthier family within himself, since he can't likely change his toxic family outside of himself. Later down the road, narrative therapy could be used to help him rewrite his personal narrative and help free him from the trappings of prophecy, which clearly haunts him. It may also be worthwhile to consider existential theory for future intervention ideas. We also must reconnect Baldr to his body if we want him to overcome his curse. I think using a chakra-based, bottom-up approach, utilizing meditation and/or movement would be beneficial, especially if it can be explained in a way that aligns with his cultural background. With more research and cultural understanding, it could be possible to recontextualize chakras by connecting it to either the magical practices or by connecting it to Yggdrasil, the world tree. Let me quickly clarify what Yggdrasil is. It is a central, sacred tree in Norse cosmology. On it exists all the 9 worlds, which includes the reality we live in, as well as the 3 afterlives which were previously mentioned. The Deeper the Love, the Deeper the Hate is the title for a great bit of research that shows a true connection between the emotions of love and hate. Anecdotally, it's easy to conceptualize this, for it's harder to muster up true hate for someone you felt nothing for in the first place. Which leads me to the final piece of Baldr's treatment. I think family therapy with his mother will be crucial to Baldr's recovery. Freya was the one family member Baldr once had a positive and close relationship with. It was her actions that started his symptoms, and the loss of this bond that caused him the most emotional pain. Perhaps in the reconnection between mother and son, his curse can be lifted. In summary, I conclude that Baldr has complex post-traumatic stress disorder. My differential diagnosis includes conversion disorder and depersonalization disorder. There are some considerations that should be noted before starting treatment. First, we will need to learn more about the Norse culture so we can best serve the client. Second, there is a potential risk of Baldr hurting himself or others due to his behaviors. Precautions and monitoring may be required. Third, the current treatment plan does not address the toxic family dynamics on his father's side. There are limits as we are only working with Baldr and not the family as a whole. A general idea for a broad treatment plan has been developed, but will need fine-tuning as therapy begins and we learn more about Baldr. The plan so far is to refer him for medical testing to confirm or disqualify physical nerve damage. Build trust with the client so he can have a safe place to express his current emotions. Start psychoeducation and help him develop emotional regulation as well as coping skills. Use existential, family systems, and narrative art therapy to process his traumas. Reconnect the client to his body. And finally, begin family therapy to repair the relationship between Baldr and Freya. Thank you for watching the whole analysis. I've provided the sources of all quotes and research in these last 3 slides. I also provided the link where you can watch God of War 2018 for free. Please leave a comment if you have any questions. Bye!